The Baltimore Ravens fan base has been through a roller coaster of emotions this season, and it all came to a head with the shocking news that John Harbaugh would no longer be leading the team. For years, Harbaugh had been a symbol of consistency, a coach who delivered playoff runs and a Super Bowl victory. But this past season exposed cracks that could no longer be ignored. It wasn't just one game, one loss, or one misstep. It was a series of disappointments that slowly built up over the years. The team repeatedly faltered in the fourth quarter, squandering leads that should have been sealed victories. And it reached a point where the organization had to make a tough decision. Steve Bisciotti made it clear that the move wasn't impulsive, but the result of careful consideration, gut instincts honed by years of experience, and the understanding that the team needed a new direction to compete at the highest level. Bisciotti openly acknowledged that while players shared responsibility for the failures on the field, the standard of excellence set by the organization was not being met. He reflected on conversations with veteran players, emphasizing that their input mattered. But ultimately, the decision rested on his shoulders in a move that surprised many. The firing was handled over the phone, a detail that underscored the urgency and decisiveness behind the choice. Bisciotti didn't shy away from the uncomfortable reality that change was necessary. He recognized the sentiment of the fan base, the frustration that had been simmering for years, and acted decisively to reset the trajectory of the franchise. The team had shown flashes of greatness, but flashes were no longer enough. Winning in the playoffs required more than moments of brilliance. It demanded a consistently high-level performance, a commitment to execution in every quarter, and strategic decisions that reflected a winning mentality. The reasoning behind the decision was methodical. Bisciotti had observed patterns in game management, decisions that didn't align with the strategic expectations of a head coach at this level, and the inability to secure leads in crucial moments. These repeated shortcomings were not anomalies. They were indicators of a deeper problem that needed addressing. Fans had long expressed frustration over blown leads and inconsistent performances, and Bisciotti's evaluation mirrored those concerns. He had watched the season unfold, analyzed the tape, and assessed the decision-making process in high-pressure moments. The message was clear: the organization demanded excellence, and anyone in a leadership position had to meet that standard. There was no room for complacency, no tolerance for underperformance, and certainly no justification for repeated mistakes that cost the team in pivotal moments. Looking beyond the coaching change, the organization also placed accountability on the front office, specifically Eric DCACA. Bisciotti made it clear that while coaching was a significant factor, the performance of the roster and the evaluation of personnel were equally crucial. DCACA was recognized as one of the best general managers in the league, but even the best must confront shortcomings. The season exposed areas where talent development and scouting fell short, leaving gaps that had a direct impact on the team's competitiveness. Bisciotti's approach wasn't about assigning blame but emphasizing that improvement and adaptation were mandatory. He communicated a clear expectation: failures in preparation, drafting, and personnel management were not acceptable, and changes needed to be implemented in order to maintain the franchise's standard of excellence. The conversation about accountability extended beyond individual failures. It was about organizational culture, communication, and alignment at every level. The Ravens had enjoyed years of success, but sustained competitiveness requires constant evaluation and adjustment. Bisciotti highlighted that mistakes, whether in coaching, roster construction, or scouting, were opportunities to learn, but only if addressed openly and decisively. There was a recognition that while DCACA accepted responsibility, the organization needed more than words. Results had to follow, and the offseason would be critical in resetting priorities, reinforcing standards, and ensuring that the next chapter of the Ravens would be one defined by strategic growth and tangible improvement on the field. The ripple effects of these decisions were already being felt across the franchise. The coaching search had begun, and the stakes were high. Bisciotti was deliberate in framing the narrative around change as necessary, not reactive. The focus was on long-term sustainability and achieving the kind of playoff success that fans had come to expect. Past failures in the postseason had taught hard lessons about the balance between preparation, talent, and execution. The new coach would be tasked not just with maintaining the status quo, but with elevating the team to a level where every playoff appearance was a legitimate run for the championship. The message to the players and the fans was clear: excellence is non-negotiable. and the Ravens would no longer settle for mediocrity. While the spotlight was on coaching and management, the roster itself was under scrutiny. Bisciotti and DCACA both addressed the importance of evaluating player performance, identifying gaps, and making adjustments that would translate into more consistent success. This included not only identifying talent, but ensuring development systems were in place to help players reach their full potential. The season had exposed vulnerabilities, particularly on the offensive line and in the pass rush, and addressing those areas would be critical moving forward. Fans could expect a more proactive approach in evaluating talent, adjusting strategies, and creating a roster capable of competing in the most demanding scenarios. There was also a broader understanding of the fan base's expectations, which play a significant role in a franchise like Baltimore. Bisciotti openly acknowledged that while fan sentiment does not drive decision-making, it is a vital signal of where the team stands in the court of public opinion. The noise from the stands and social media reflected real frustrations, and the organization's response to those signals would shape not only team morale but public perception. The Ravens had a proud history, and maintaining that tradition required aligning management decisions, coaching strategy, and player performance with the high expectations set by past successes. As the franchise prepared for the next chapter, the emphasis was on learning from mistakes, reinforcing accountability, and ensuring the culture of excellence permeated every level of the organization. Bisciotti's leadership demonstrated that difficult decisions, though unpopular, were sometimes necessary to safeguard the future of the team. Fans were being reassured that their voices were heard, that the leadership team was taking bold steps to improve, and that the Ravens were committed to building a team capable of not just reaching the playoffs, but competing for championships year after year. The firing of Harbaugh marked the end of an era, but also the beginning of a new opportunity. The organization was clear in its expectations, strategy, execution, and leadership would define success, and mediocrity would not be tolerated. Every player, coach, and executive was now on notice that accountability, preparation, and performance were the keys to moving forward. The next season would be about more than wins and losses. It would be a test of whether the Ravens could adapt, innovate, and rise to the standard that had been set by past champions. The message was consistent and direct. This was a turning point for Baltimore football. Change was not just necessary, it was inevitable. And while the immediate focus was on leadership and roster adjustments, the ultimate goal remained the same: returning the Ravens to the elite level of competition, where every game mattered, every decision counted, and the championship was always within reach. Fans could feel the energy of a franchise ready to reset, a team determined to learn from its failures and rebuild with intention, ensuring that the next era of Ravens football would be defined not by past disappointments, but by future triumphs. The conversation around the Ravens did not stop with the head coaching change, because once that domino fell, everything else naturally came into question: the front office, the roster construction, and the long-term vision of the franchise were suddenly under a much brighter spotlight. Steve Bisciotti made it clear that this was not a surface-level reset. This was about recalibrating the entire operation, from how talent is evaluated to how players are developed once they arrive in Baltimore. The message was not subtle. The standards that once defined this organization had slipped, and restoring them would require honesty, accountability, and difficult conversations at every level of the building. One of the most telling moments came when Bisciotti addressed the idea that success in the regular season could no longer be used as a shield. Making the playoffs was no longer the benchmark. Winning divisions, sneaking into the postseason, or hanging banners for participation were not enough. The Ravens measured success by advancing, by standing toe-to-toe with the best teams in January, and proving they belong. Over the past several seasons, the results simply did not match that expectation. Each playoff exit added another layer of frustration, not just for fans, but internally. The sense was that the team kept hovering in the same space, never fully collapsing, but never truly breaking through either. That feeling of being stuck became impossible to ignore. Year after year, the Ravens would show promise, only to unravel when the margin for error disappeared. Late-game execution, situational awareness, and adaptability under pressure were recurring issues. These were not talent problems alone, they were symptoms of a system that had stopped evolving. Bisciotti acknowledged that football is constantly changing, and organizations that fail to adjust get left behind. Standing still in this league is the same as moving backward, and the Ravens had reached that dangerous point. The focus then shifted toward the general manager. Eric DCACA, and the responsibility that comes with shaping the roster. Bisciotti expressed confidence in DCACA's abilities, but that confidence came with an unmistakable warning. Being respected around the league does not grant immunity from criticism. Several key areas of the roster failed to develop as expected, and those shortcomings showed up when the competition intensified. The offensive line struggled to impose its will, the pass rush lacked consistency, and depth across the roster proved unreliable. These were not surprises that emerged overnight. They were issues that had been identified before, yet persisted. What stood out most was the emphasis on internal development. Drafting players is only part of the equation. Turning those players into reliable contributors is where organizations separate themselves. Bisciotti made it clear that the Ravens expected more growth from young players, more progress from mid-level contributors, and more impact from recent draft classes. When that growth does not happen, it forces the entire team to compensate, and those cracks become glaring in high-stakes games. Accountability, in this sense, extended beyond any single individual. It was a systemic expectation that everyone involved in player development had to raise their level. The discussion also touched on the idea of honesty within the building. Public accountability is on thing, but real change happens behind closed doors. Bisciotti's comments suggested that there would be deeper evaluations of how decisions were made, how players were scouted, and how roles were defined. This was not about assigning blame for the sake of it. It was about identifying why certain evaluations missed the mark and ensuring those same mistakes were not repeated. The Ravens have long prided themselves on being a model organization, and that reputation was something Bisciotti was determined to protect. As attention turned toward the future, the head coaching search loomed large. This hire would define the next era of Ravens football. Bisciotti emphasized that there is never a perfect time to make a change, but waiting for the perfect moment often leads to missed opportunities. The organization wanted a leader who could command the locker room, adapt schematically, and maximize the talent on hand. Strategy was a central theme. In today's game, preparation and adaptability often matter as much as raw talent, especially in the postseason. The next head coach would need to embody that reality. There was also an understanding that this decision would send a message across the league. Baltimore was not content with being good. The franchise wanted to be feared again. That meant embracing innovation, challenging long-held assumptions, and refusing to settle for familiar outcomes. Bisciotti spoke about trusting his instincts, shaped by years of watching football at the highest level. Those instincts told him that maintaining the status quo would only delay the inevitable. The Ravens needed a new voice, a new vision, and a renewed sense of urgency. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support keeps us bringing you the latest news on the Baltimore Ravens. And hey, drop your take in the comments below. We want to hear from the flock. Whispers are swirling in the NFL community about a potential seismic shift in Baltimore, and it involves one of the league's most electrifying quarterbacks. The Ravens, long celebrated for their dynamic offense under Lamar Jackson, may be contemplating a bold move that could redefine their aerial attack. Sources close to the organization hint that Kliff Kingsbury, the offensive mastermind known for his high-octane passing schemes, is on the team's radar as a potential architect to fully unlock Jackson's extraordinary skill set. Lamar Jackson has never been a typical quarterback. His ability to extend plays with his legs, coupled with an increasingly sharp arm, has kept defenses guessing for years. Yet, despite flashes of brilliance, there remains a sense among insiders that Jackson's ceiling is higher than what has been consistently realized. Enter Kingsbury. The former Cardinals head coach has cultivated a reputation for transforming quarterbacks into prolific weapons in the passing game, blending creativity, pace, and verticality in ways few coaches dare to attempt. The speculation is that pairing Jackson's unique talents with Kingsbury's offensive ingenuity could create a revolution in the Ravens' playbook. Imagine a system where Lamar's agility and improvisational prowess are complemented by structured schemes designed to stress defenses horizontally and vertically. For a team that has long balanced run-heavy strategies with opportunistic passing, this could mark a dramatic shift in philosophy, a gamble that insiders say Baltimore might be willing to take. Of course, questions abound. Kingsbury's tenure in Arizona was met with both awe and criticism, and adapting his style to fit Jackson's dual-threat nature would require careful calibration. Additionally, the Ravens front office would need to navigate salary cap considerations, long-term contracts, and the pressures of aligning coaching vision with player development. Yet, the allure of a game-changing offensive renaissance appears strong enough to spark serious discussions behind closed doors. As murmurs continue to circulate, fans are left to imagine the possibilities. Could Lamar Jackson, already one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in the league, reach unprecedented heights under a coach known for offensive creativity? The Ravens might be on the verge of engineering a new chapter in their storied franchise history, one that could reshape expectations and ignite imaginations across the NFL. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay in the loop with exclusive news on our Baltimore Ravens, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. We'd love to hear what the flock thinks. Drop your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next one.